Hey, what's up guys? This is Rob and welcome back to Rule of Two Review, where today I'm going to discuss the fantastic Resident Evil Remake. Okay, so this is something way too cool for me to not talk about. It was recently revealed that the infamous Resident Evil 1 Remake, which came out for the GameCube in 2002, is getting basically a remastered version of itself to be released upcoming soon, early 2015, for the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC. Very regrettably and surprisingly, no Wii U version, but I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. First, I wanted to kind of talk about my feelings and thoughts and hype and excitement about this. I am a huge Resident Evil fan. I've mentioned it, and it's come up a couple times on previous videos on Rule of Two Review. I grew up in the days of, the kind of 90s gaming. I remember when the PlayStation was brand new, and when the first Resident Evil was a brand new, earth-shattering experience, and everyone was talking about it, and no one had seen or played anything like that, and I watched my friend play it on his PlayStation. This is 1995 or 96. I think maybe 95. Either way, it was definitely the mid-90s there, one of those 2 years, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And of course, it revolutionized the survival horror genre, basically created it, and it was just a huge revolution. Resident Evil is one of the biggest series in gaming. A lot of controversy with the last two, Resident Evils 5 and 6, which I totally understand. I actually like those games well enough, but they certainly are a little jarring for most old-school Resident Evil fans. And again, I am an old school Resident Evil fan. I like the newer games that are more action oriented. And Resident Evil 4 is my favorite Resident Evil and one of my favorite games of all time. But aside from that, one enigma of a masterpiece, it's the older Resident Evil games that I prefer because I grew up with those. I like the clunky, shitty controls. I like not isometric. I like the static camera angles and the way it shifts around, the very cinematic experience. I like the slow crawl of the zombie infested mansion. I love that shit. That was perfect. That to me is Resident Evil. And in 2002, when the remake came out for the GameCube, that was an amazing experience and a wonderful time. GameCube is one of my favorite systems of all time. I'm a huge Nintendo fan, of course. And that was a period where Resident Evil, Nintendo had actually had I think people forget about this, especially some of the younger gamers maybe who weren't gaming back then, now 12 years ago. But people maybe forget that at that time, Nintendo had a deal with Capcom to make Resident Evil exclusive to the GameCube for most of its life. Resident Evil 4 did eventually get a year or two late port of itself to the PS2, but other than that, and before the GameCube release, there was a version of Code Veronica on the PlayStation 2. But once the GameCube released, and all the way till the end of the life cycles in 2006, for Resident Evil 4, then all those other Resident Evil games were exclusive to GameCube. Most importantly, the remake of the original. Now, that game is very famous, very well known for being amazing. It is easily my second favorite Resident Evil experience of all time. It's better than the original, and it's better than Resident Evils 2 and 3, which are both scarier games than the first one. But the remake was 70% new content. It was the best looking thing I'd ever seen at the time. I did not know games could look that good when I first bought and played that game. It revolutionized how I looked at scary games, Resident Evil games as a franchise, zombie games, gaming as a whole, both in terms of visuals and story and puzzle solving and atmosphere. It was awesome. So fantastic. And it's just kind of too bad because those older games in that remake, they've kind of fallen to the wayside and kind of back into the annals of history, and they're not really relevant. No one talks about them anymore. We do know that I think Resident Evil 4 got yet another HD port over to PC or Steam or something in the last year, and that game's been moved all over the place. We did get Resident Evil Revelations, which was fantastic. And of course, we know that they've been talking about Resident Evil 7 and what they're going to do with that going forward. But other than that, we just haven't been hearing a lot about Resident Evil and what really made it great initially. So now comes the brand new revelation that the remake itself is getting its own remaster for the early part of 2015. And that is cool for a couple of reasons. So I think the most immediate reason that jumps out to me as to why this is really cool and a great idea is the fact that we live in a very remake-heavy society when it comes to gaming right now. Lots of HD ports, remakes, remasters, redos, definitive edition this, special edition that, blah, blah, blah. And, the problem that a lot of people complain about, actually, this is a very common conversation, and I actually agree with it mostly, is that most of the games we're seeing, especially with this new generation, and most especially with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, are games that just came out. They were just the last generation. They were just last freaking year. I'm looking at you, Metro Last Light and The Last of Us. These games are not even 2 years old. And Tomb Raider. These games are not even a year or two old, and they're already coming out. with like HD ports, and they're already HD, so they're like HHD for these new systems. And I get they're all great games, so don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the games are bad. Just the way this port thing is happening is crazy. Now, when it comes to Resident Evil, the remake, which was already a remake, I know, getting a port now to the newer systems, it's wonderful because that game's old. That game has a reason to have a resurgence. A lot of gamers now never played that game. They've never experienced even the old Resident Evils. I mean, just as far as, there's probably a lot of kids who are maybe 10, 15 years old who've only played Resident Evils like 5 and 6 maybe, for example, and have no idea really where the Resident Evil roots lie. This is the game for them. This is how you do a renaissance, a resurgence of a game series that was just so lauded back in its day. You know, it's the reason why the Wind Waker HD also made sense, because that game was 11 years old. That's how you do an HD remaster. Don't take a game that's 7 months old and then re-release it, for a brand new system. That's just kind of silly. Like, I mean, it's fine, I guess, for people who want to play it, but to me, it just seems redundant and it's forceful. These games, an old game, a 12-year-old game, by the time it comes out, a 13-year-old game like the Resident Evil remake, that game deserves to have a 3-generation later port with all the brand new bells and whistles and all the good things going on there. I think that's going to be great to bring it to a new generation. It deserves its remake status. This is a game that probably won't release for $60, but I would gladly pay $60 for it if, in fact, that was the price. That's how excited I am to play it, and I'm really excited to think that gamers and people who maybe never played this game will actually get to play and experience it. Oh my gosh. They're doing some cool things with it. You can choose between the old school clunky controls and like a more traditional, more kind of the expected controls you'd have from today, something that's a little bit more contemporary and modern. I think that's really cool. I think you can change the aspect ratio to 16:9 to 4:3 if you want to play it like old school style. This stuff is wonderful. This is like, you can play it in the nostalgia version or you can play it for the up-res new version for 2015. And it's really cool to give everyone sort of that option. I think that's really neat. One of the things that I do have to say that, again, I'm surprised and disappointed by, and I mentioned this earlier on the video, is there's no Wii U version. Too bad, because I, of course, am a Wii U gamer first. I will be able to play this game. I'll probably buy a PS4 version of it. I think I mentioned it's coming to the PC too. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that, but it is, just in case I forgot to say that. I'll probably play the PS4 version, unless maybe they just decide to release the Wii U version. It's weird because the game was initially on a Nintendo system. It was exclusive to the GameCube, a Nintendo system. So it's odd that, in this day where it's obviously not exclusive anymore, why not still honor its original audience and bring it out on Nintendo's current system? Not to mention Resident Evil Revelations for the 3DS, one of the best reviewed and best-selling Resident Evils in a long time. That was a fabulous game. That got an HD port to the consoles last year, I think, and that got a Wii U version, which was considered the best. So it's really an odd choice not to bring this to Wii U. I think it would fit so well. I kind of wonder if maybe Capcom's being lazy and they don't want to do anything with the gamepad, which is really a shame. But I don't know that. That's just my own speculation. So really kind of an odd and sort of stupid choice to not release it on the Wii U. Big mistake there. Big audience being missed. I'm sure a lot of people out there are going to be disappointed. But hey, this is one of those things where I have to look at the positive. And to me, the positive of just having the game re-released for the new generation outweighs the unfortunate slight that there's no Wii U version. I mean, that's definitely not the way it should be, but it is what it is. I'm just excited to be able to have the game to play again. I've been thinking about reordering it on the GameCube just to kind of replay that. So I might actually do that and then still get it and play it again on the HD remaster or the... I don't know if they're calling it remastered or remake, remake. I have no idea what it's supposed to be called as of right now. We also don't have a date or price, like I said, but we know it's early 2015. My guess is probably February. I think it's going to be first quarter. This is going to be an amazing thing. Like I said... For anyone out there who never had a chance to play this, you've been missing something special. We live in a lucky, blessed time because you're going to have an opportunity to play this unbelievable, unforgettable masterpiece. I know that it's still going to hold up. I know it's still going to be great when we play it today. There's no doubt in my mind that most people, especially if you like scary games or very gory, zombie, mature themed kind of games, if you've never played Resident Evils before, you're going to love this game. I promise you. It is that good. Really excited to see what it looks like up-res, like I said, 3 generations later. It's a pretty cool, man. It's a really, really exciting thing. So, yeah, that's it. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. Was a big fan of this game on launch day in 2002. Excited to play it 12 years later again. Really excited to support it. This is great news. Good for Gamerdom. They're doing the right thing finally with an HD remake. This is an old game, not last year's game. This is all good stuff. Oh, one more thing I want to touch on. Actually, I'm really glad I remembered this before I ended the video. So this is something that I actually got. Review Tech USA is another very popular gaming channel. Rich runs that channel. I'm a huge fan. I love Review Tech and I love Rich. He's a little polarizing at times. Sometimes he kind of can be a little offensive to some people, but he's really honest and he's very genuine and he's also very objective. So I really appreciate that about him. And he actually made a video about this a couple days ago. I'll go ahead and link it below too. You should definitely watch it. It'll be much shorter than mine. It's like 4 minutes long. My videos are always very long. And he brings up a really, really cool point that I think is worth noting, and I agree with the point that he makes. What he's ultimately saying is he remembers, this is exclusive to Capcom, he remembers way back before Street Fighter 4 came out, they released a special edition re-release of Street Fighter either 2 or 3, I think it was Street Fighter 2, for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. And that was very, very well received. A lot of people picked it up. A lot of people played it. There was a ton of interest. Capcom made a lot of money on that. And it wasn't too long after that they finally announced that, hey, Street Fighter 4 is actually coming and this is it. And that was a huge deal. And his theory there is that Capcom might have been testing the waters to gauge interest in Street Fighter after all these years, either to decide if they should make Street Fighter 4 or because Street Fighter 4 was already in the works and they wanted to start to drum up hype and buzz, you know, leading into their reveal of the game and then eventual release of the game. And it obviously worked and paid off because everyone loved that Street Fighter re-release and everyone played it and bought it. And Street Fighter 2 is a masterpiece. It is a pinnacle in fighting game history. So it's really cool that that was successful and that helped lead into the success of Street Fighter 4. Now, when it comes to Resident Evil and a current Capcom today in 2014, we know that they've been going through issues, but it's actually been getting better this last year, by the way. They've been reporting some pretty good numbers the last 12 months, which is really cool. We know that Resident Evil 6 was a big deal because people mostly hated it. It sold okay. It actually sold pretty well. Didn't review very well. Most diehard fans hated the game, so it's a very divisive game. In lieu of that, Capcom has been very public since the release of Resident Evil 6, stating, hey, we hear you guys. We know what's going on. The next Resident Evil 7, will be focused on what made Resident Evil great in the first place. It'll be more about the scares and the horror environment than the action and the explosions. It is going to go back to its survival horror roots. Like, you know, verbatim, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what was said. Great news. Very exciting for Resident Evil and horror fans. So we know that that's happening with Resident Evil 7. But with the re-release of the GameCube remake for the original Resident Evil, I kind of wonder if, I mean, again, based on Rich's theory, he proposes, I can't speak, it's so late right now, guys, oh my gosh, he proposes that what they might be doing is kind of doing the same thing with this, where they're sort of drumming up hype and gauging the interest in Resident Evil, especially the old school kind of Resident Evil experiences, by seeing how popular and how well received this is. Either to influence Resident Evil 7 or to influence a game that would come out after Resident Evil 7. And honestly, that all makes complete sense to me. And Rich, I totally agree with you. I think that that's a really good theory. I think you're 100% correct there. That's probably what's going on. And if so, that makes me even more excited to see if this game really is successful and kind of works in that respect and hopefully influences Resident Evil games in the future going forward the exact way Resident Evil is meant to be. So we need to all support this game, get excited for it, get hyped, buy this game, play it, love it, revel in it. It's only going to be good for you as a gamer and good for the Resident Evil series going forward. And that's it for the Resident Evil remake today. Really, really exciting. I hope everyone else is excited for it too. If you like what I'm doing and you stumbled across this video, please feel free to subscribe to Rule of Two Review. I make several videos a week, always talking about gaming-related stuff, all sorts of different news. And if you like the video, you can like and share it. You should share your comments below, of course, about the video and the subject of the Resident Evil remake. Follow the links below also to the Facebook page and the Twitter for Rule of Two Review, both of which I run. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you guys next time.